Welcome to our weekly photography business conversation. It is good to have you here. If you're catching me on the replay, hello and welcome. You are welcome to ask questions anywhere in the comments you wish. Start a conversation. And if you would like some topics for future shows, I am more than happy to entertain those. I depend on them. I depend on your participation, whether you are here live or you catch me noon Eastern Standard Time on Fridays for this conversation about the photography business, growing your photography business, pricing, and anything else that you feel you need maybe some clarity or just to bounce an idea off of someone who's been in the business a while. That would be me. I've been in this business for quite a while, and I do enjoy the educational portion of helping other photographers grow their business. And this week's conversation is about big and small clients. Which is bigger? Which is bigger, having a large or a small client? And I think it really comes down to this. I mean, obviously it depends on your goals, but there are advantages and disadvantages for each. Kind of funny. I have a ladybug right here running across. You of course can't see it. My board, just sitting here watching me, stopping and watching me. So I have an audience. It's a ladybug just keeping an eye on things here. Kind of funny. I wonder where that came from. Anyway, so which is better? You know, you certainly, as a photographer, we often dream of those big clients. You know, we want to get that big corporation that's going to give us this huge job. Now, there are photographers who make a good living just working maybe once or twice a month with large fees and large clients. And that more has to do with brand building, being able to build your brand to a level at which these large companies are coming to you regularly. Otherwise, for a lot of photographers, that big job is every few months, maybe a few times a year. And the question is, how often, how much time should you put into going after those big clients? And again, that comes back to your goals. Because look, if you're depending on, especially say one big client, let's say you land a big client that gives you a reasonable amount of work every single month. Well, what happens if there's a shift? What happens if the person that is hiring you leaves or is downsized, or the company you're working for is bought and they already have a resource for a photographer? So as much as a large client, nothing wrong with large clients, but if it's your only client, that is where it can get a little tricky. And so I think that, not that I'm saying go for all the small clients either, but because obviously the downside with a small client is sometimes they often don't have the budget. And if you have a smaller client that has a smaller budget, but has regular work for you, it can still be a foundation. And I often find smaller clients to be a little more loyal too, because they don't have as many people knocking on the doors necessarily. You build relationships better, maybe with the owner of the company or the marketing person, and you can keep that relationship longer. And it's a kind of relationship that may not fade necessarily as quickly. Obviously, there's evidence for both ways, but I find that having a good few, 2 or 3 good smaller clients as your foundation to pay the bills is a great way to go. And depend on the large clients as gravy, as bonus. So, for example, when I was, maybe 20 years ago during my career, I would have a lot of media clients. Today, maybe you would have a lot of website clients, but I have a lot of media clients. And these media clients would cover my base expenses. And then when I got a bigger corporate client, that would be gravy to me. And that's where I think it's good to have your sources of income spread around. I think ultimately you should probably have, hey, let's use the general rule for as these for millionaires, you always often say, the average millionaire has 7 sources of income. Well, I'm not suggesting you need to be a millionaire, but having a good solid 6 to 8 sources could really be, a good goal for you to have. So sometimes the question is, how many do you get? How many do you keep working for? How many you're looking for? Well, obviously those different sources are going to come with different amounts of money. But if you have a good 6 to 8, that way, if 1 or 2 leave, you can replace them over time. It's not going to totally take you out. And of course, you have your larger clients that you can still work on, hopefully, maybe attract through your website, good SEO. Maybe you put a budget aside for a Facebook or pay-per-click Google campaign. There are a number of ways to approach this. So, just plan it out and think about what would be the best for you, because I know that projects, for a lot of times photographers work on projects, big projects, and project photography, it's really nice when it comes in, a big project, but again, when it goes away, now what's next? You've been working on that big project, but you haven't been marketing for more. That is such a common scenario, that photographers don't come in. Or new jobs don't come in while you're doing the big project, or you have to turn other projects down during that time. And so maybe a good client goes somewhere else and finds another photographer. So big projects can have, be a detriment to your business if you don't play it right. And so understanding, what are you going to do when that other project comes in, when you have a big project or working for a large client? Do you have maybe a trusted photographer that you can refer business to that does a similar kind of type of work that you do? These are things to think about. These are important things to think about. And so just understand your goals and go from there. All right. So I have some questions of yours to answer. I should have mentioned that earlier. Okay. So the first question is, how should I structure my permit pricing? And this, I know this came from a conversation back and forth. Actually, a couple people, actually had a person on YouTube ask for clarification. Actually, her question was, okay, so I'm doing per image pricing, and so first image, sake of argument, local usage is $250. But if I knock it down to $125, if it's one image, it's $250, and if there are 2 images, it's $125. And what I was saying is that the first image is $250, and each additional images are $125. And I think that kind of a tiered pricing answers this question, is that have a solid, good price for the first image, because you want to cover a good portion of your expenses with that first image. And then you can stair step it down, maybe 2 to 10 images is another price. Maybe that's $175. And then maybe over 10, it's $125. It depends on, you have to do the math to figure all of that out. But that is what you can consider as your process. And in other things, another thing I often recommend is that you do not go down too deep. So if the first image is $500 and your next image is $100, I think it's better to have it $375, closer to that number. And as you go down, that number can get lower with volume, most certainly. But you don't want to devalue that first image so much. Okay, so your first image is $500, then why is the second one $100? I mean, the value. I've known people have said $1,000 for the first and $50 for each additional. Like, oh, you're devaluing that first. It's just, no, don't do it that way. Make it a percentage down. Maybe you decrease by 25% as you step down. So that's a good way I would structure the per image pricing. Okay, should I move to a larger city such as New York? Well, speaking to, this is related to obviously a photography career. Isn't it the old saying, or I don't know if this is still true today, but there are more photographers per square mile in Manhattan than there is anywhere else. I mean, it's the fact is, I mean, unless your town has no business, then yeah, you may want to move to another town that has more activity. Does it have to be a huge town? No, there are a lot of, there are a lot of cities that have businesses. They have ad agencies, marketing companies, individual businesses. It just depends on the type of photography you want to do. Now, if you want to get into fashion, New York is pretty big, Miami or Chicago. These are LA. These are places that you might want to look at. Maybe not as much Chicago. If you're a food photographer, Chicago's big. So you look into the type of photography you do, and hey, weigh it out. And if there is work where you are and your family's there, it doesn't mean you have to move to become a photographer. Now, if you're doing family photography, the need to move isn't as great, I don't think, as if you have a specialty and then there are towns. Maybe you want to shoot high tech. Well, maybe you need to move to California or the Carolinas where there's some things happening. I mean, there are a number of reasons to move in different places. If you want to get into movies, maybe that's Atlanta. I mean, there are a number of different things you need to consider in terms of where. And in different cities have certain niches in which they're strong in. Obviously, where I am, manufacturing is still big here in Metro Detroit. Do a ton of manufacturing for international clients and national and even local clients. And it's good. I mean, it's good business, and I enjoy working with the people, and I get to see interesting things. And so that's a lot of fun for me. But I am in a larger city. But I wouldn't necessarily come to Detroit for fashion. Maybe you live within a reasonable distance and you don't want to move far from family, but in Detroit's your closest, and you want to do fashion. Well, you may have to move a little bit further. So those are the things you should be thinking about in terms of your location. Okay. Next question. Should I specialize in one area of photography? Well, my answer is yes, but that does not mean, when it comes to your marketing, I often recommend specializing in one area. And that doesn't mean, for example, I specialize in food, and I just talked about the manufacturing. I do tons of manufacturing work, but food is one of the big areas that I'm known for. Fact is, I do a lot of different types of photography here in Detroit. There are a lot of different opportunities, and quite honestly, it's quite necessary to do different types of photography. I don't do family like I used to in the past, in weddings and so forth. I haven't done those in many years. That's not my main focus. Although, I have photography friends, and we certainly talk about the wedding industry. And I actually, within the last number of years, I've helped people with weddings and so forth. But I've not been that's not been my business plan. Is not part of my business. So I certainly understand that area of photography, but that's not my focus. But when I'm out there advertising for my work, I focus on three. I focus on people, food, and interiors, which, if you think about it, is a restaurant, right? But if I focus on those three, I'm pretty happy, and I get enough work in to cover the bills and so forth. Okay. Should I pay for directory submissions? So, there are a number of different types of directories out there. There's some focused on photography and photographers. And what I would do is start to ask around, are you looking and asking people, are they looking, especially in the marketing world, maybe just say, hey, do you ever look in these directories? And chances are they're going to say no. I mean, you're going to be found more likely by putting your money and time and investment in search engine optimization or pay-per-click advertising than being found in a directory. But there are some situations. I have clients who use directories and do find business. It just depends on how well those directories rank. And if those directories are ranking well, it can work, but generally there are better places to put your money first. And if somebody has a directory that's working well for them, feel free to share. But I have not seen that, especially in the photography industry. I've seen directories in these services work for, for the trades. The trades industry, that's not photography, obviously, plumbers and electricians and builders, that's worked. And in some cases, the wedding industry. there are some opportunities there. If you have maybe a local popular magazine that all the brides go to, or website, and being involved in their directory, that can have some value. You just have to test that out. And I can't say which one's the best in your part of the world, but you very well may know of a couple. Test them out and see if they do provide any kind of leads and opportunity. And if they do, keep going with it. Remember, you just want to make sure you have a positive ROI. Even if you're breaking even, I would say keep it, because you're probably getting other benefits, such as awareness of your brand, and people may find you down the road. They've seen your name, and then they find you another way, or just search you direct a year later. That kind of stuff can happen. And then they'll say, well, I found you online. It had nothing to do with the original source that they found you on. So these are things you need to consider. Okay. Next question. How should I expect to, how much should I expect to pay a rep? A representative. So if you want a representative, or you can certainly hire one, a professional. If you're going to hire one that's out in the world, make sure they have a lot of good connections, quiz them well, ask, what types of industries they have good connections in, and maybe a little bit of the direction they go in, maybe some examples of work that they've helped connect photography to, things like that. It's very helpful. Go to the websites, check them all out. And, you can always do a homegrown rep, which is something I've done in the past, and it's worked out very well. Now, how much should you pay them? Well, the range generally is anywhere from 20 to 30% of the fee, of the photography fee. So, if there's a large production and it's, $500,000, and the photography fee is 50,000 of that, no, the rep doesn't get 20% of that. It will not be getting $100,000. It'll be based off of the $50,000 fee. And here's the deal. A lot of times we think, oh, well, that's a big chunk of my, well, think about it. Think about it. Let's say it's just one person. Let's say you did a homegrown person, and they're all making 20% of what you make. So if you're just paying the bills, now they're making 20% of you just paying the bills. So you need to consider that. And that's why they probably need to be representing multiple people, or they're doing it part-time. But if they're doing it part-time, they need to be really committed part-time. I've seen a lot of people who've gone into things like this part-time and really never followed through and did the work that needed to be done. Remember, this is sales, and sales is not easy. They need to understand how to connect with people, how to honestly be aggressive and get in the door and show your work. So 20, 30% is a very fair range, obviously, depending on experience and what they say they can bring to you. Obviously, 30% is a higher. There are people I've seen as high as 50%. I have seen as high as 50%. I've rarely seen below 20%, because it just doesn't seem to work out very well if that is the case. Okay, last question. Interesting question, kind of a combative question, if you ask me. Why should I care about my photography pricing? I have a job. Well, that's, here's the way I look at it. I don't care. If you don't care, I don't care. You're not getting your full value. And you say, wait a minute, they're hurting. You know what? The chances are they have a job. They're not taking on too many other jobs. But I have something else to say about this, so bear with me. But they're not taking many. And if they start to take a lot of those jobs, then they're working 7 days a week. And they're eventually going to say, man, I need to charge more because working 7 days a week is a lot of my life. But if they're just taking a few jobs here and there, I'm not happy about it, but so be it. But here's the downside for them is, a lot of times people get into photography and enjoy photography and get a few clients, and they come in at a low price, but now they want to, it's like, wow, I want to go full time. I love this. I want to make this my job. And they've run their photography business with such poor business practices that when they go out there, they wonder why they're failing and why they have to go back to work maybe a year later, because they didn't care about their pricing. They had a job. They set the precedents early on. They didn't use best practices, and ultimately, it prevented them from doing something that they would love to do, love to have a career as a photographer. And that's ultimately it does come back around. And again, if they, as I mentioned before, if they get real busy, they're going to increase those rates because it's going to be taking up so much of their time, and so otherwise, because it won't be worth it. So these are the things we have to think about. Don't worry so much about what other people are doing. They are going to follow their path. Your best bet is to share shows like this and other podcasts and blog articles with photographers who are getting in the field. Say, hey, here, have you listened to this show? Go to pricing.photography. And there's a show every Monday, among other videos in the archive related to helping you with pricing and your business. So that's what we do here. And so with that, I wrap it up. If there are more questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but nothing in the chat today. So we will we'll connect with you again, and we'll talk the business of photography right here, noon Eastern Standard Time. It's price.photography will get you. I should try something. I should see what other options are out there, but price.photography will get you to the YouTube channel, and you can just watch or you can participate. And I look forward to it. If you would like more business advice, more ideas there, you can certainly go over to Rosh.video, where I have marketing strategy ideas and channel building ideas over there. You have a great week.